But yeah, so my topic was called Discuss the Police. And I tried to think about, like, it's a very simple title, but it is pretty accurate. I really wanted to be in conversation with people, and I wanted to make it clear that it wasn't really about me necessarily educating my group on all of the important issues. I really wanted to get people's perspective of where they were at the beginning of our first meeting, and try to understand a pathway to helping each other have conversations about how to improve the way that law enforcement and somewhat tangentially mass incarceration works in our country. I chose to facilitate it because it's something that I've been fortunate, like, not to have to deal with in in too deep and especially not too tragic of a way, but it's definitely been part of my life, and it affects how I see myself and how I feel when I'm in public, especially around law enforcement. And so part of it was like, is it true that the way that I feel is the way that everyone else feels? I learned some things, that there were things that I think about that are absolutely not the way that other people feel. And I also wanted to get a sense of, so, if we can come together and at least agree that there is a better way, which fortunately we were able to do. That was one of my worries, is that I might end up with, some people in the group who are pretty significantly in support of the status quo. That didn't happen, thankfully. I think probably Michelle and Karen would have tried to avoid that particular eventuality, but yeah, so we could all agree that something should happen in order to make it better. So then we got to have some pretty deep and interesting conversations about what are the options available, what are some of the differences in the main platforms being put forward, and now that it's over, as I briefly mentioned before, I'm felt really fortunate to be able to learn so much from the members of my group who did really great research and brought some really interesting and nuanced perspectives to the conversation. It helped me to further understand the depth of some of the problems, beyond even just the things that I had experienced, which I really wanted that I really want to change for the future, so that fewer people have to experience those things. Yeah, I learned a lot from the folks in my group, and it feels like everyone now has more tools with which to have deeper and hopefully more effective conversations with the people in our communities and people that we care about, in order to try to keep stepping forward. So.
Okay.
Did you all have questions or anything, or was there anything that you wondered about my topic?
Well, I wonder if maybe we could just talk about, describe our topic, and then open up to the larger thing of why was it important to facilitate, and how do you feel now? Kind of that could be more conversational. So if we just introduce the topic, maybe you could do that, Deb. I'm going to try and, I don't even know how much time we have left.
No, I lost track too. Probably less than 10 minutes. But David, Linda, and I were co-facilitators for our group, which was the personal politics of Taiko. And I should say that Linda was the one invited to do this workshop. And I was added on in a really wonderful way, for which I will be eternally grateful, because I love spending time with Linda. Where we were coming from was an attempt to sort of activate, a basic feminist principle that the personal is political, and to really try and go deeper in Taiko in terms of specifically racialization and anti-blackness. So we ran our sessions almost entirely through discussion, rather than any other of the ways one could do it, through lecture or anything like that. It was entirely discussion based. One of the things I loved about facilitating these sessions was the fact that I was doing it with Linda, and that we spent a lot of time outside of the Sundays, talking by phone, you know, and just sort of a lot of simple talk story, strategizing, planning, sharing of hopes. And yeah, we already knew each other, but we know each other so much better at this point. Yeah, for me, it was a real opportunity to spend time with a woman, a taiko player who's a legend in feminist taiko circles.
That's
Yeah.
neat. Really?
Yeah. Yeah, really. So that was a large part of why it was important for me to facilitate this, you know. One of my reflection about this project and where we are at this point after 3 or 4 weeks, we actually met all 4 weeks, was that this was so needed. This was like, you know, this was exactly what the Taiko community needs to be talking about. I'm just so grateful to Michelle and Karen for seizing the moment and activating 200 people who really wanted to talk about these matters. That's just incredible. I think we also realize that the urgency of it all and the extent to which the stakes are so high, you know, that this could only be a beginning, you know. So I'm feeling that very keenly at the moment, as I talked about earlier in our other breakout room. Linda, why don't you?
So now I'm just wondering, David, we felt that we never really got to the crux of the matter. Do you feel that you were successful in your goal for the discussions? Do you feel like you came to conclusions, actions, you know, blah, blah? And did they understand what you were talking about?
Gosh, yeah, I mean, Deborah, I think what you said is so on point, which is namely that like the stakes and the scope are so sort of unwieldy that it's really hard to say, like, you know, like if there were a finish line, it's just so, you know, like, yeah, yeah, it's crazy. So one of my main goals was actually pretty modest, which was namely that like I wanted people to know more of the aspects of some of the issues so that when they talk about it with their friends and with their family members, you know, at least you have a little bit more to draw on in having those conversations. And I absolutely think we got there. You know, I don't think, for example, that we decided like this is the best proposal through which to reform the institution of the police. I think we all did sort of agree that like a weak or defund proposal is not the thing. You know, like, so that's, you know, there could be other people who disagree with our group stance on that, but through conversation, I think we each came around to like, there needs to be some pretty sweeping, some transformational reform that happens. And it could be abolished, or it could be like, give the police one job sort of thing, rather than trying to make them do so many things. But exactly like the methods, you know, I think it's just so hard. And I imagine that every topic was that in some way. Yeah, it's just so hard to say whether you were successful or not. But sorry, to more succinctly answer the question, yes, I think we got down to the thing that I was hoping we were going to discuss, which is basically like, what are the ways in which we could move forward? Let's talk about all of those ways and learn as much as we can about them so that we can continue talking about them with other people, and maybe somewhere down the line we'll get to a better place.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'd like to hear a bit from Linda.
Sorry. In Vancouver, for instance, one of the things they're saying at a certain point, and I don't know why this never got dealt with, but at a certain point in Vancouver, they released all kinds of mental health patients into the world because they didn't think the institutions were doing any good, which may have been true. But then there were all these people wandering the streets, and the police feel like they're expected to deal with it, and they are. And so I think the Vancouver police are kind of fighting back against that expectation that they should deal with anything that happens on the street. They're feeling like they're being asked to deal with issues that they really don't know how to handle. they're overreacting to people because they just don't know. They're not trained to deal with people who are, not quite able to deal with the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a beginning here in Vancouver.
Yeah, I mean, it is a promising beginning, but it is exactly what you said. Like, it's just the beginning, and
Yeah.
it's kind of such an inertial thing, like the idea of the police is so ensconced in American culture that it's really hard to get it to move. But kind of speaking of inertia, I'm curious for you all, for me, it was definitely kind of, there was some distance with the conversation because no one in my group turned out to be a law enforcement professional or anything like that. But your topic was very personal, and I know that can be hard when people are asked to look at themselves and the cultures in which they participate. Did you find that there was that sense of inertia, or were people pretty agile and ready to shift kind of thing, or at least to take a good hard look at it?
Linda, what do you think? No,
well,
Linda, what do you think?
We had one white person in the group, for which I was grateful. We also had two men, one of whom is an activist and the other of whom is not. We're not quite sure why he was in our group. It seemed like he wasn't at all political. He had no notion about politics in Taiko, and so it was kind of peculiar. But the white woman was, and both of the men were fine dealing with whatever we talked about. The white woman was, I felt, accepting of things we were seeing about Taiko having a racial basis, and what happens when that's lost. Is something lost from Taiko when that doesn't happen? And I think she did go away feeling like she needed to think about that. But I'm not sure Deb agrees.
Don't.
Yeah,
but that simply means that we should all continue talking. I think it's possible that she felt that the North American focus on heritage is not relevant to her experience in Europe. That's worth talking some more about. Yeah.
The context is pretty different, and in such a heterogeneous society, I think people need those anchors. It is important, and it's hard for me. It's hard to have any sort of growth without a strong foundation. And where's the foundation of Taiko in North America? It's absolutely political. It's absolutely cultural. I think
exactly.
Even if you don't count that as a part of your palette, it behooves us to sort of like respectfully and carefully make it a part of your palette. If you're going to.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. Taiko's not a blank slate, that you just get to play with. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I as much as I was delighted and sometimes frustrated and at the moment feeling very dissatisfied about how far we got, I had a lot of just admiration and respect for the people in our group, because they were like a huge range of ages and ethnicities and politicizations and all that, but with the exception of the one person, were very willing to think critically about their own practice, their own their own engagement. That is thrilling to me, that we've reached a moment in this phenomenon of Taiko, where there appear to be about 200 people who are really eager to think and talk in these terms. That I think is really significant.
Yeah.
You'd have seen it. Yeah.
It does feel like a milestone.
Doesn't it?
It's interesting because it
makes
you.
Maybe,
Oh, thank you.
I don't know how long we have. I wonder if maybe we should talk about what, now that the project is over, what do you feel like should be done? See, I don't feel like our project is over. I kind of feel like I would like to continue talking to these people, not like bam, 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 the way we've been doing, because that really was stressful as it turned out on me. But I would like to continue talking at a more leisurely pace.
Yeah.
Let the conversations continue, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We made this spreadsheet of resources, and it was cool. It was actually a suggestion of one of my group members, and so we put it together after the first week. And you know, it's not like there are thousands of things, but there are some pretty interesting resources that were shared into that document that I think none of us have had time to go through it all. So at the end of our last meeting, you know, we talked about it, and basically everyone said, like, we're kind of excited to just keep going through some of the things and maybe even continue posting to it, to read like what people are doing in local communities. You know, there's been some experiments with police abolition already, or people who have basically like not abolished their police departments, but like disbanded it entirely and rebuilt it from the ground up. Some really interesting things to read about. So I think for us, that was the next thing, is like continue going through the resources that we have and trying to solidify our understanding of the potential options.
We have 1 minute. Deb, I wonder if you could talk about your work with the Riverside Police.
David, for 20 years now, I've been doing work in Riverside, California on you know, police brutality and attempts. At the grassroots level, we created in the year 2000, not easily, we created a community oversight commission for the police department, you know, and oh my God, what a long haul that's been. I should send you an article I wrote about a sound analysis of what at that point were police audio recorders worn on the body, and the kinds of recordings of officer-involved deaths that came out of all of that. So I've been thinking deeply about these matters for a long time. I'm at a point where I'm feeling fairly jaded about it all, because I see how much effort it takes to get not very far, quite frankly. So I'm becoming an abolitionist, and that is not where I started. Yeah,
that's great. I would love actually to take a look at it, because I'll just say really quickly, my sister is kind of getting involved with trying to set up something similar for the Harvard Police Department. So I think it would be really helpful to read her work. Yeah.
The whole university PD thing is a whole can of worms that needs attention.
No kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I would love to take a look. Thank you.
You betcha. Yeah, and thank you for your workshop.
Yeah.
Linda, we'll keep talking.
Yeah.
I think we're about to get yanked out of our room.
Yeah. Well, we have 20 seconds, you know, that can be very
20 seconds. Oh my God. David, it was great to have a little time with you. Seriously.
Absolutely. Thank you both.
Yeah, it was interesting to be able to talk to you.
Absolutely.
I didn't ever talk to you.
Exactly.
I know, it's like so in passing. Great to connect with you,